Hello, I'm the Reverend Renee Rahutsky, and I'm the Leadership Development Consultant for the Central East Regional Group, which is a cooperative effort between 4 different districts. So the territory that I serve is quite a large one. Because of this challenge, I have learned how to meet virtually, and I've been asked to share some of these tips with you. So how can virtual meetings be actual ministry? My colleagues have asked me to share best practices for virtual meetings with you, and since I can't be there in person, I'm using this video format to share what I've learned with you. The first thing I want to point out is that virtual meetings can be actual ministry. We just need to learn about the limitations of the technology, when to use it, when not to use it. Hopefully this video will help you discern how this might work for your congregation. I'm basically going to cover 3 areas. First is different forms of communication. Second is how we can work as a team using technology. And the third topic is best practices for distance small group ministry. Let's start with forms of communication. The best communication is always in-person communication. This is because so much communication happens non-verbally. We get cues from body posture, facial expressions, and you can even just pick up on the mood of the other people in the room. Another form of communication are web meetings, where you have images such as the one you're seeing of me right now on the screen, along with audio, either through the computer or using a phone line conference call system, along with the video on the computer. This allows you to pick up on general kinds of moods and facial expressions, although because of the limitations of video, it's very difficult to pick up on nuanced kinds of emotions. Another often used form of communication is the phone conference. Now this of course has the limitations where you're not seeing the other people in the meeting with you. There's also the challenges of how do you take turns talking, you can't pick up on visual cues, and it's very easy to get distracted. And then there's the kind of communication just via text or email. Now I want to point out that different kinds of communications work well for different situations, but also for different generations. So it might be highly appropriate for someone in their 20s to text a conversation because there's certain understandings about the limitations of that. Where with some of us who are a little bit older, sometimes we're tempted to read into text or email communications. So I want to talk a little bit about when to use each kind of communication method. Email is always good to plan meetings, to set up logistics, maybe work out some hard details. But unless you are really in right relationship, in covenantal relationship with the others in the conversation, it's best to leave any highly charged or emotional topic for another kind of communication. And again, people in their 20s who already are used to communicating using text and email might be able to have a more charged conversation using text or email than those of us who are latecomers to this technology. So when do we use each kind of communication? In-person communication is best for emotionally charged subjects. It's always best to first meet in person before setting up virtual meetings. Email communication is the most limited of the 4 that I'm covering. It doesn't pick up on nuances. Even if you put in emoticons, sometimes people can still misinterpret. If you don't know people very well, it's best to set up a phone meeting for the first time you talk or meet with one another, or even better, a web meeting, and best of all is an in-person meeting. In fact, I highly recommend that before you work with any group of people or start building relationships, try to spend some nice, slow, getting to know you time with the other person or with the group of people before setting up subsequent virtual meetings. Phone conferences have been used for a while because we've had this technology for a while. But again, there are some limitations to when you want to use phone conversations. If you are hosting a phone meeting or a phone conference call, it's best that you make clear what the ground rules are for communication. So sometimes it's good to go through the roster of who's on the call, ask people to say their name, like this is Renee, before speaking, because we don't always recognize each other's voices in the same way that we might recognize, for those of us who are visual people, might recognize faces to go with names. And it's also good to, if there's a lot of people on the call, to maybe do a round robin kind of talking in turn process so that people aren't talking over one another, everyone gets a chance to be heard, and they can pass if they want to. The computer video meeting, where you have both sound and video, people can raise their hands if they want to talk. Some of the software that I'll talk about later actually has a little button where you can raise a virtual hand and you can see who raised their hand first. So for more complicated meetings, a computer video is good. Also, some of the programs that are available have a screen sharing capability. So if you're working on a project together, such as I've worked on PowerPoints with people, we can actually pull the PowerPoint up on the screen and be looking at the same thing as we're discussing it. So that can be very handy. And again, you can pick up a little bit on emotional states of the other people on the video call. And again, in person is the best always. We have limitations due to geography and wanting to be green and for costs, but if you can meet in person, that's always the best way. And part of this is this whole idea of mirror neurons, that as we are in person with one another, we connect in ways that are outside of our consciousness, and it's important to respect that and take advantage of that when we can. I'd like to spend a little bit of time now talking about how you can work as a team using technology without meeting in person. And again, I can't emphasize too much. You want to meet in person the first time if you possibly can. One handy tool for team collaboration is Google Documents. And I have a little screenshot here that shows how, this is a sample spreadsheet, but it shows all of the people who are currently logged into that document at any one time. And it's color-coded, so it highlights the cell on which your particular computer is working. So if you see here, there's a U cell and a collaborator cell. And this is a way, for example, when I'm doing planning, like a Gantt chart or something that lays out a plan or a sequence or responsibilities of who's going to do what. Worship planning even can be done this way. You can actually be talking on the phone and then working on a Google document at the same time. This can also work if you're editing a document together, working on a book project, working on a newsletter article, anything like that. There's presentation software, there's word processing software, spreadsheets. So documents that you want to work on together, you can use Google Documents. Another possibility is using some sort of web conferencing software. There's a lot of examples out there. Lately, I've been using AnyMeeting. By the time you see this, I might have changed, but it's a free web conferencing platform that I create an account. I can invite people to join me in a meeting. This particular screenshot shows a picture of me in video, and you can see I'm holding a chalice, so you can use it for an opening worship. And I also am screen sharing a PowerPoint document. What I'm not showing you here is there's a big old advertisement on the side of the screen. I cropped that out of this particular picture. Because it's free, there's the advertising. But there are also paid services where you wouldn't have advertising. And if you look over on the left side of the screen, there's a list of attendees. And again, in this particular program, there's a little My Mood button, and you can click on that to raise your hand. And then there's also a little chat box. And when I do webinars, I invite people to use the chat box to share resources, but also to make those little kind of joking comments that folks sometimes like to make in meetings, sort of like side talk, but something that everyone gets to see. And then you have the ability to copy and paste the chat and email it to everyone afterwards. You can actually take notes in the chat window, or you can take notes on the screen share that you're doing. You can also allow other people to use their web cameras. This particular software, again, the audio, there's audio available through the computer, but until the technology is improved a little bit more than it is right now, I would recommend always having a phone conference line for your audio and then the computer for the video. There's also programs such as Skype and ooVoo, which are video phone services, and you can get accounts that you can have multiple people on the screen, and you can also have screen sharing ability. So there's some free versions, there's some paid versions, but that's another possibility of using one of those internet telephone services to have meetings. And here's an example. So I want to spend a little time now talking about best practices for distance small group ministry. In small group ministry, what we want to do is we want to be present as possible to the others in the group. So if you're able to meet online with some sort of video, which I would recommend, you want to make sure that you have that maximized on your screen. Don't have Facebook up, don't have your email notifications up. You want to be fully present to just that part, have only that program running on your computer. I also recommend that you use headphones so that you can be less distracted. It's kind of a tunnel vision with the computer, and not so much with the computer, but you want to be as present as possible with the people who are on the other end of the software that you're using. You can also see there's another headset that I use that's this is the one I use to, if I can hear the phone or the doorbell or other things. So I like this particular headset as well, but if I really need to be fully present, I can use this one as well. And actually this one plugs into my phone, so I can use it instead of a Bluetooth. And again, you can use a Bluetooth too if your computer's equipped for that. The other thing is that you want to, again, follow the practices for meetings, for virtual meetings or for web meetings. So you want to provide for sharing in turn in a way that people can feel comfortable and feel at ease with the process that you're using, so they know what to expect. Maybe you could have up on the screen who's sharing in what order. Since you're not in a circle, a visual circle, you can at least be in a cognitively be in order in a certain way. Or the other thing you can do is if certain programs have the names of the attendees in order, and you can use that order because it should be the same order on everyone's screen. But again, because of the limitations of the technology, you want to increase the comfort level as much as you can. So to have the ritual opening, if you can actually light a chalice and show it on the screen, there's actually a couple of animated flame kinds of things out there that you might be able to do. Check out the Church of the Larger Fellowship for an example. They have a little app where you click on it and light the chalice there. And also, you can have visual kinds of reminders. I like to have, here's an example of just a meditative photo. So during the meditation, you could have something like that up on the screen to help put people in the mood. So you have the advantage of having multimedia, and you can be very creative about how you might use that in small group ministry kinds of situations. But the other thing I want to share with you is, and I'm going to model this right now, is to really be fully present. So right now, I'm looking at the camera, and I'm imagining you. And for the context of this particular video, there's a group of people with Mark Bernstein in Delaware, and there's a group of people with Annette Marquis down in the Southeastern District. And I'm thinking about you and wishing you blessing So that's an example of presence and intention in a small group ministry kind of situation. It might take a little bit of practice, but using technology in a way that helps us do ministry can help us grow Unitarian Universalism. So I invite you to experiment. I invite you to make a few mistakes, but also have a lot of learnings. I invite you to try something new. Be ready to make a mistake or two, but also realize that we can open our churches in ways that our forebears never could have imagined. Blessings to you and your congregations.